My father was king, King Herod the Great. It's a title hard to live up to, especially if you're his son. I was always living in his shadow, even when I became king. You may know him as the one who built the temple in Jerusalem, though he cared nothing for the Jews. Building that temple was all about his own thirst for grandeur and power, which would finally catch up with him. But I must not be too harsh. I will have to admit that I did not fall far from that tree. I was born burdened by history and genealogy. I too had a madness for power and a terror that it would be taken away from me. Paranoia is the word for it, I suppose, or megalomania. But even then, people were indeed out to get me. My father was paranoid too. That explains why he tried to kill the baby Jesus. A king was being born in Bethlehem, his Jewish sycophants told him. A real king of the Jews he was to be. Ha! So Papa the Great ordered the death of the infants in all the land, a full-scale slaughter. But wouldn't you know it, Jesus lived. King Herod the Great could not even kill the right baby. I would have to show him how to do it. I would have to show them all. So I was king then when the man Jesus showed up. I told myself I would pluck that thorn from my family's side and rid the land of this so-called Messiah, this Savior. But first, I had to get rid of John, the one they called the Baptist, a detestable man dressed like a homeless wanderer. He was always shooting his mouth off, always unhappy with the way I was doing business. He hung out along the Jordan River preaching nonsense and pouring river water on the heads of the great unwashed. But when he started in on criticizing me and criticizing my marrying my brother's wife, well, that was too much. So I had him arrested and thrown into the deepest, darkest pit of a dungeon that I could find. At the very least, I could teach him a lesson. It would teach them all a lesson. I had no great desire to kill him. That was my new wife's idea. Really, it was my new wife's idea. And what she gets something in her head, there is no talking her out of it. So to keep peace in my family, I had John murdered and his head presented to me on that famous platter. Well, yes, that was a mistake, of course. Any fool could see that. There's nothing worse than a martyr for destroying your plans. And so with his death, I brought grief on myself. And then this Jesus showed up. Well, I tried to learn my lesson. I stayed away from that controversy as long as I could. I would get reports about this man, Jesus traveling the countryside, preaching and healing, or so they said. But then he began to be a threat. He entered Jerusalem for the Passover celebration, one of those damn Jewish festivals that seemed to give them hope. His followers welcomed him to the capital as King of the Jews. And it was no laughing matter now. I first let that little pig of a man, Pilate, deal with him. But of course, that man can't do anything right. I always have to hold his hand. So he sent Jesus to me. And it was then, when this miracle worker was standing before me, that the old hated memories returned with a vengeance. My father had tried to kill the baby Jesus, but I made a promise to myself that I would not let Jesus get away again. On the morning of his crucifixion, I got my soldiers to dress Jesus in royal robes fit for a king, you see. Do you get the joke? Do you get the irony? It was hilarious watching him stumbling along in those clinging robes. I guess you could say that I showed him who was king. I showed him who had power. To quote the Jewish scriptures, even the trees of the field shall know that I am the Lord. Well, in fact, I saw to it that he was nailed to a tree, a blood-soaked tree. No life in that tree at all. I saw to it that he was dead and buried. Well, now, yes, of course, you recognize that there are those who will make up any kind of nonsense. They say that this Jesus was raised from the dead. Can you believe that? I got a good long laugh out of that news. But then I had time to think about it, and I began to doubt the wisdom of what I had done. I soon realized that I had created yet another martyr, just like I had done with John the Baptist. And you know what happens with martyrs? You can kill them just once.